Then sings my soul. Since the writing of this song goes all the way back to a Swedish guy, which is close to Norway, right?
Yay, Norway! Yes. We love Norway. Yeah, sure, you betcha.
We went out on a walk and got caught in the thunderstorm, and then as the storm subsided and he heard birds starting to sing again, it inspired this text. But more importantly, just to think about the greatness of God, the goodness of God, and we're called to think about that. And when I think about it, I was drawn this morning to Psalm 104, which just starts. And it's a long song, but it is a song that just talks all about what God has done in creation and what he continues to do in creation. And as I look at that psalm, it says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, you are very great. You are clothed with splendor and majesty, covering yourself with light as with a garment, stretching out the heavens like a tent. He lays the beams of his chambers on the waters. He makes the clouds his chariot. He rides on the wings of the wind. He makes his messengers winds, his ministers a flaming fire. He set the earth on its foundations so that it would never be moved. You covered it with the deep as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. The mountains rose, the valleys sank, down to the place that you appointed for them. You set a boundary that they may not pass, so that they may not again cover the earth. At your rebuke they fled. At the sound of your thunder they took to flight." And it just goes on and on and on. Talks about all the animals, all the things he's created, all the things that feed the animals, all the things he does to sustain. One of the things I love about this particular, there's a couple things in this psalm. One is that it goes back and forth between he and you. In other words, in verse 3 it said, "He lays the beams of his chambers on the waters. He makes the clouds his chariot. He rides on the wings." Verse 6 gets right into, "You covered it with the deep as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. You set a boundary." It goes back between he and you. And I guess what that reminds me of is that we have a position before God to be able to recognize a greatness that is his and his alone. And yet it's a personal thing. We can go back and write, and some of the songs we sing oftentimes proclaim who he is, and all of a sudden the he turns to you, and the you go back to he, and the he goes, and that used to be confusing to me. There was a time where I just didn't like that. I'd rather even know I'm singing to God or singing about God. But this particular psalm has helped me in the sense that in my thoughts, and these are things that I have to strive to do, to think about God and to meditate upon his word. There are times when I look at that rather third person in the sense that he does this and he does this and he does that. But when I do too much of that, I withdraw myself from the picture. I withdraw myself that his word is speaking to me, and it's him. He's speaking to me. So that I can turn that not just as if I'm explaining God to somebody else, but I can say, you do this, you do this. And that has helped me in terms of just how I meditate on the Word of God. Because it's easy to, and for whatever reason I'm not so sure, but it's easy for me to kind of remove myself from the conversation. And I can just kind of leave it at a very comfortable space. Because God's God and I'm not, right? And there's truth to that. And yet, that's not where he wants to keep me. That's not why he sent his son to die for me. And I want you to embrace that. And it goes back and forth and back and forth. And I think this particular psalm itself, if you read it, it's really almost a restatement of the very first verses of Genesis. Because it says, it began, you cover yourself with light as with a garment. Genesis 1:3-4 says, "And God said, let there be light, and there was light." It goes on to say, "You covered it with the deep as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains, and the mountains rose, and the valleys sank." In Genesis 1:6, "And God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." you read through Psalm 104 and you read through that first chapter of Genesis, it's basically taking Genesis and putting it to song. And that's a really special kind of thing, because it's easy to just read through that first chapter of Genesis and, again, admire the things that God did, but again, you're way down here admiring rather than you're speaking to him and saying, you did this, you did. And I need that. I need that personal sense of being involved with him rather than just thinking about him. I don't know if that resonates with any of you, but it certainly does with me. So if I ask you the question, what are some of the things that, when you reflect on God's greatness, his greatness, which is what this anthem is going to be, what are some things that strike you about the greatness of God? Anybody? Again, this is...
He created all.
Yes, he did. He did. Yes.
This is incredible attention to detail. Everything in the world, everything in the universe.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
got us.
definitely. Definitely. Absolute holiness. That in itself is kind of hard to get your arms around, isn't it? Yeah, definitely.
He's outside of time.
Outside of time. Yeah,
He's already written everything. It's already done.
yeah, it's all done.
He's got the whole world in his hand.
Okay. He does. Go ahead.
He purposely wants us to be involved in his creation.
Yeah. He draws us in. He draws us in. Enter in. He draws us in, right? And it's not that he just created everything, but he continues to sustain everything. You know, if you ever go to the beach and you're just standing out there and you think about how much life is underneath the water, and it's not like fish are jumping up going, I'm starving to death, or, you know, whatever, because everything feeds, everything eats, everything is sustained. And he does the same thing on top of the water. We tend to mess it up. But the idea of God continuing to create that sustains, it's like when he spoke the world and the universe into motion. Somebody once said to me that sound, that speaking of things just continues to go. And that's why we could continue to reach into space and we'll never run out of things that we find that have been created, because that word never stops. It just goes forth. I mean, those things are just amazing. But then, stop talking about what he's done and say, look at what you've done. Now, all of a sudden, personally, I am connected to it. And that puts me in a place that I have to be if I want to not only grow in who he is, but I want to connect to. Any other things? These are good. These are good, yeah.
I love the fact that no matter what expert you come up in any field, what, you know, the foremost people ever who, you know, the biggest genius in whatever field, no matter what, they know nothing compared to, you know, he's the one who created it all. No, he knows everything, and I think that's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, anybody that just says, look what I've discovered. And he's going, yeah.
I invented it.
I knew you were going to do that. This is like, wow. Anything else? What are things that challenge your ability to think on the greatness of God? Yeah.
Well, Aaron Miller said something several months ago, and I'm going to get it wrong, but the gist of it was the same power that was thrown out when God created the world and all that is in it is the same power when he saved us, called into our lives and drew us in. And that's powerful. To me, I really like, what? That creative power.
And any glory that we might try to claim for ourselves is really just the glory of God within us. Mm-hmm. To the point to where the day when God decides, I'm going to take my glory, my spirit out, and that cataclysmic rebirth of the heavens and the earth that will happen when he returns, that glory is his alone. So you can think of Yosemite, but he removes his glory from it, there's nothing there. And distracts you from the greatness of God at times?
Well, we see it all the time, our busyness,
Mhm.
hustle, bustle, like we don't see his creation. We
Mhm.
don't notice his creation. We don't think about how good he is in what he supplies.
Sure.
I got to go last Saturday night to a star party with our own, plays the French horn, Dave Coppedge. 30 of us did, and it was a new moon, which means the moon isn't there, and the sky is amazing, and just seeing God's handiwork. But we don't, with all the lights down here, we don't see 1/4 of what we saw that night. And we don't see it. We don't take the time to look at what God is doing in his creation, or maybe even in our own lives.
Very true. I tend to feel at times that I look at created things rather than I look at where God is, how God works. And I have a perspective from a pastoral point of view, but if I want to see God's greatness, I oftentimes look at the fact that faith endures in people, even in tragedy, even in the worst of times, when they have to go through the most horrible things, and yet at the same time, their faith still holds. That's a glory that is God's alone. Because you and I know that's not in us, right? That he has a saving love for unlovable people. Can you think of an unlovable person? No. I love everyone. But the truth is he does, and he loves them completely. Kind of is awe-inspiring, isn't it, when you think about it? When I think about the survival, I'm not going to get political here, but I'm just going to say, when I think about the survival of the nation of Israel for thousands and thousands of years, when they have been attacked and attacked and attacked and attacked, the very fact that it still survives is the glory of God. The very fact that his word has been preserved since the very beginning, that somehow, whether it was Qumran or from there on, Dead Sea Scrolls are found, all of those things. That's the glory of God. I just wanted to kind of meditate on it before we sang this, because I want you to think about it, because you've sung these words so many times, I don't want them to be blank. I don't want you to think about God did this, and God did this, and he did this, you did this. And it starts with that, O Lord, my God, one I an awesome wonder, consider all. And then later on, he says, when I think that God, his son not sparing, sent him to die, well, he just removed himself a little bit from it. He's speaking to those who he would address. That on the cross my burden, and then it goes right back to when Christ shall come and take me home, what joy. All of that is just talking about, and then we have to come back. Then sings my soul, my Savior, how great thou art. Right? Let's stand up and go through this one.